Today, we will be continuing our ongoing class on the Miluim, the supplements, to volume 17, which is Parshas Mishpatim, of the Torah Sheleimah by Rabbi Mendel Kasher, where he's discussing in great detail, specifically, the mitzvah of dinim, that Bnei Noach are obligated to set up a court system. And without reviewing everything, but basically, what he was presenting to us from the sources, and what it came down to was that there's actually an argument as to what exactly is the mitzvah of dinim, of having a court system for the Bnei Noach. One opinion is that it simply means that the non-Jewish world has to have a system in place where they are going to be judging their people about keeping the other six laws of not stealing, not committing adultery, no blasphemy, not eating the limb of a live animal, no murder, and of course, most importantly, idolatry, no worshiping anything other than Hashem, than God himself. So, dinim, having laws, a court system, means to make sure that they keep those six, and that's it. And the question then becomes, well, what about all the civil laws between fellow men, people, in business, and damages, etc., etc.? So one opinion, one approach was, let them follow our laws. If the Torah laws are good enough for the Jewish people, because they're God-given, they're the divine laws, as they appear primarily in the section of Mishpatim, in the book of Shmois, of Exodus, chapter 21 and on. So then let the non-Jewish world keep those laws as well. Like, why not? And the other opinion said, no, those are Jewish laws. And those are the Torah laws, and they're God-given to the Jews for the Jews, and that's it. Well, then what about the rest of the world? The so-called 70 nations. How are they supposed to live in peace? And how are they supposed to have laws and settle their arguments and who's right and who's wrong when it comes to business and when it comes to territory and when it comes to exchange, etc., etc.? So they need to make up their own laws, and each country in each given time sets their laws. And then what he said was that according to the Torah, those man-made laws they carry the weight of being God-given. They fall into the category of dinim, which is the seventh of the seven mitzvahs b'nei Noach. And a bunch of people got together to make a civilization, to make a country, and they made the laws. And they have to keep those laws biblically. That's what's unique about the one of dinim. The other ones, and of course they cannot touch the six. They can't tamper with that. They have no right to say, well, we allow people to commit murder or adultery or steal or whatever. No, they can't do that. But other than those six, when it comes to just regular civil laws, it's up to them to make it up. And they can modify it, and they can keep changing it. And as it changes, okay, now we spoke about this at length in a previous class, that, for example, if a person is living in one country, he has a set of laws that he has to follow. And if he moved to a different country, or if he's visiting in a different country, then he's got to follow those laws. And those laws are binding biblically, even though they're man-made laws. Okay, I hope that's clear. Then the last thing that we learned in the last class, we're now actually going to begin on page 221, which is in the back of volume 17 of the Torah Sheleimah. That's where we're up to, the beginning of 221. The last thing we learned at the end of page 220 was very exciting for us. But I do want to clarify, although I think we mentioned it last class, but I want to make it really clear. What Rabbi Kasher is saying does not exactly go along with the explanation that the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach himself gives. And that is, there's a whole sikh, a whole talk that we've learned in the past inside. When the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach began the so-called campaign, or promoting officially and then publicly the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, at almost every public farbrengen, every public gathering that was televised on cable TV back then, almost every single one, he would speak at length about the importance of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. That's besides the other times when he spoke in a closed circle, so to say, on a Shabbos where there was no recordings, and he's speaking just to his 5,000 or 6,000, 7,000 followers that are in the room with him. But besides those times, but on a regular basis, those times during the year when it would be televised, and he's speaking, and anybody could just turn to that station on the cable and hear what he's saying, his message, one of the messages, was about Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach and the importance of promoting it and getting everybody to keep the Sheva Mitzvahs, etc., etc. So that started in Tov Mem Gimel, which would be about 1983. So he spoke about it, and then he edited that talk, and it came out several months later as a weekly edited pamphlet called the Likutei Sichos of that week, and then subsequently later it became one of the Sichos in the book of Likutei Sichos. So today it would be in volume 26 in the regular Likutei Sichos, volume 26, the third Sicha for Yisroi Gimel, and it's the entire Sicha is all about this. It's from page 132 till the end to page 144. And it was said in 1983, and it came out edited around January of 1984. Okay, now, in this Sikha, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach addresses a very fundamental and a very obvious question, if you will, and that is, if this new campaign of his is so important and so clear and so obvious, and it's an obligation on the Jewish people to promote, to say the least, to promote the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and the Rambam says so clearly, and the Rambam was about 1,000 years before, so the question is, where have we been? Why do we not find that the Jewish people were involved in this? You're going to find an isolated case of the Chidah meeting one person, and that makes a whole big deal. Where was the entire Jewish people? And why don't we find it in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of law, telling a Jew all the rules and all the regulations, all the laws, all the customs of how to behave in Galus, in exile. And what's going on? Why is it not there? So that's the obvious question. So the explanation and the answer that the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach gives doesn't seem to, Rabbi Kasher doesn't seem to fit with that. Rabbi Kasher wrote this many, many years prior to the Sikha, so we're not blaming him. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, he actually passed away right around then. Mm-hmm. He passed away, it came out something like 1983, which was interesting.
He was born like in 1895 or 4 or something
like that. And he passed away in 1983, and this work that we're studying now, he had published in the 50s. So this came out in the mid-50s. So this is way before the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach promoted the Sheva Mitzvahs and made a campaign out of it. Now, the answer that the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach gives doesn't fit with what Rabbi Kasher is saying. And the answer is that it was just a matter of circumstance that the Jews were unable to, and we didn't have the opportunity and the ability to tell the non-Jew what to do. And throughout all the years of Golus, of exile, and that's how the Shulchan Aruch was written. The Shulchan Aruch was written only some 500 years ago. So it's written in exile for the Jew living in exile, telling him what to do. So you're not going to tell the Jew that he's obligated to tell the Goy, the non-Jew, how to behave and what to do. He's happy if they're letting him, keep his religion and keep his mitzvahs and not oppressing him and not making a pogrom, etc., etc. However, that all changed for the better, says the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. As we're now in this period of time, in the early 1980s, he says most of the world and most of the Jews in the world are not only free to keep their religion, they're actually in positions to tell the non-Jews what to do. Generally speaking, they have business associates, and many Jewish people have the upper hand, and they're the ones that can influence and tell their non-Jewish associates who need them. They could tell them what to do. All right. Be that as it may.
But is there a conflict between the two?
It's I would say so, because let's repeat again Rabbi Kasher's explanation. And that does not fit with what we just said, which is obviously the right explanation. It's the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach's explanation. But I just think that Rabbi Kasher's approach is so interesting, even if we don't follow it and we say, well, that's not the real answer, because the real answer is in Likutei Sichos. So to remind you of what Rabbi Kasher's explanation is, without reviewing the whole, page 220 in the whole previous class, he says, the Torah Sheleimah, Rabbi Kasher, he says that when the Rambam says that the Jewish people are obligated to influence, or more accurately, to compel, or better yet, probably the right translation is to force, to get the non-Jewish world to keep their 7 mitzvahs, that is a halacha for the future. It's a messianic halacha. It's a Rambam telling, because the Rambam, as we said last time, tells us all the laws which apply forever, from way back forever. He's not restricted, as is the Jewish code of law, for the Jew living here and now. He's writing the Jewish law for all 613 commandments, including those commandments which we can only do when we have all the Jews living in Eretz Yisrael with the Holy Temple, the Beis HaMikdash, and including the laws that we can only do in the future to come with Mashiach. The Rambam has it all. So therefore, this is not the only halacha which cannot be fulfilled and is not applicable until some future time, but this is one of them, says Rabbi Kasher. He says this halacha is, if you will, a messianic halacha. It's a halacha, to use his words, it was not said other than le'asid lavoi limois HaMashiach, for the future to come, for the era, the days of Mashiach. And then he brings a proof, because when the Rambam speaks about Mashiach himself, and clearly that's talking about Mashiach, and he describes what Mashiach will do as Mashiach, he says that he is going to compel or force all of Israel to go in the ways of the Torah, and he is going to rectify the entire world. He will fix the world to serve God in unison. And he quotes the pasuk from Tzefania. So that's the same language he uses just a couple chapters earlier. This is all in the laws of Kings.
It's a conditional, though. It's not really... So I don't think they really contradict so much.
No.
Well...
He wrote this in, 1950?
Yeah.
It's a conditional.
He probably wrote it during the 1940s.
Okay.
Things were different.
Right, but he's not saying that we can't do it now, and it's just if we can do it. He is saying that it never applied in the past, and it will only apply in the times of Mashiach. Mm-hmm. He could have said it doesn't apply now because we're being oppressed.
Oh, it says he said it never applied in the past.
Well, no, he didn't say that, but that's clearly the implication. That's clearly what the implication of what he's saying.
Well, then he could be saying that he anticipates that they'll be oppressed until the days of Mashiach.
No, it's more than that, because he quotes the Rambam in chapter 11, where he speaks about what Mashiach is going to do.
Yeah, but I mean, well, let's say Mashiach comes. That doesn't contradict what he says.
Again, according to Rabbi Kasher, the point is he started off asking, where do we find, what's the source for such a thing? Where do we find that the Jew is obligated to get the non-Jew to keep his 7? Where do we find such a thing? To say that a Jew has to get another Jew to keep his 613, absolutely. There is a concept called arvus, which means responsibility, that the Jewish people are all responsible for each other, and a Jew has an obligation to rebuke his fellow Jew if he does something out of line, etc. And there's many laws about how to do it, when not to do it, etc. That a non-Jew has to get another non-Jew to keep his laws, that also, it's part of dinim. However you want to explain, which is the discussion we're having now, what is dinim, what does it mean that they have to have laws, but something about it is that the non-Jewish world has to have a court system which forces people to abide by the laws. But where do we find that the Jewish people have to tell the non-Jewish people about their Sheva mitzvahs and to keep them? So he suggests, his answer is, there is no such obligation. And when the Rambam makes his statement, he's talking about Mashiach doing that. Which is quite interesting, because that means that when the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach comes out and makes this campaign, in beginning with the 1980s, that's pretty much a very strong shift, that he's doing it not just as a Jewish leader, not just as a visionary or whatever else, he's actually doing it as his role of being Melech HaMashiach, that he is Mashiach, and that's why he's now telling the Jewish world, here's what you need to do, because this is my job, this is my function. Not only is he telling those Jews that are listening to him, his followers, his disciples, go out there and get the Jewish people to start doing these, and he made a 10-point mitzvah campaign, get every Jew to put on tefillin, which, by the way, that's the first of the 10, and these days, right now, is the 50th anniversary, because it was right before the Six-Day War. So 50 years ago, in 1967, he invents a campaign. And he says, get every Jew you possibly can, all the males, to put on tefillin. And he has another campaign, mezuzah, and another one, and another 10 campaigns, all for the Jews. And then he moves on as if he's like done with the Jewish world, or like he set that in motion. Now you know what you got to do with the Jews. Now I have another thing to tell you. Guess what? You're not only responsible for whatever 16, 17 million Jews in the world, you actually have a responsibility to the 5 or 6 billion human beings on the planet. And so where'd that come from? So according to the reading of Rabbi Kasher over here, that's all part of his role as Mashiach. Just like he is working on getting all the Jewish people to come back to the fold and to keep the mitzvahs, the commandments of the Torah, and he is doing exactly what the Rambam says. He's repairing all of the breaches that are in the structure of Judaism, which unfortunately there's a lot throughout all these years of exile, and he's waging the wars, fighting the battles of Hashem, whether it's about Eretz Yisrael, that the land of Israel belongs to the Jews and not to give away any of it, whether it's about the law of return, known as Mihu Yehudi, the who is a Jew controversy. All of these things he's doing, and the Rambam says that's what Mashiach is going to do. But then, according to Rabbi Kasher, the next thing that he's doing about the Sheva Mitzvahs, that's also doing as the role of Mashiach. So that's very exciting, and that's, pretty cool. However, I do, again, want to say that as exciting as it sounds, and as much, of course, as we'd like to, promote the fact that, wow, look at this rabbi is pointing way back then without even saying who's going to do it and anything. It's just that Rabbi Kasher in the mid-1950s is saying that this is only going to be done by Mashiach, and then fast forward to the 1980s, The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Melech HaMashiach, does it. Okay, so that sounds really cool and really exciting. However, for the sake of truth and accuracy, in Chelek Chaf Vav, in this volume of the Likutei Sichos 26, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach explains why it wasn't done until now and why it is being done now. And he doesn't say because Mashiach has now come or because I am Mashiach or something like that. He says that it's an obligation that we always had that we couldn't fulfill.
Oh, I see.
So he is saying it differently.
Okay.
So we have to have, we have to have academic honesty here.
Yeah, I see what you're
In other words, so to say, emotionally, we may want to follow Rabbi Kasher's explanation, but excuse me, if the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach gives his explanation, that's obviously the correct one, and that's obviously the absolute truth. Now, if you want to say somehow that they can both coexist, fine, but it doesn't seem so. It seems like the explanation given in the Sikha is clearly because now we can do it, just like perhaps we could have done it 3,000 years ago, in the times of Shloimeh HaMelech, King Solomon. So at that time, the Jewish people were on top of the world, and everybody was in awe. King David conquered everybody. King Solomon stepped into that and just made it even more grand and everything, and no one would even dare think about waging a war against the Jewish people, but on the contrary, they all came and they sent gifts, and they wanted to learn from him, etc., etc. So at that time, there would be an obligation for the Jewish people to tell the non-Jewish people what they need to do, because the 7 mitzvahs were not only given to Adam and to Noach, but they were given by God through Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, at Har Sinai. In other words, not only Ger Toshav. Ger Toshav is a halacha. Ger Toshav, we're forcing him. I mean, your choice. You want to stay here? Okay, so here's the rules. You are a Ger Toshav. You can eat nevela, but you cannot worship Avodah Zarah. No idolatry. Okay. But not just that. We're supposed to actually try to get everybody to keep them. Anyhow, that was last class. I just didn't want to leave it with that, point. I did want to bring in the Sikha of Likutei Sichos Chavav. But that brings us now to the next piece. He's now going to go back to the topic of the discussion that we were having until now, and that is, again, the two approaches as to how to understand this mitzvah of dinim. What does it mean that the Bnei Noach have a mitzvah of laws? What exactly does that mean? Harambam v'Harayvid. Okay, the two, Maimonides, the Rambam, and his good friend and very sharp critic, the Ravid. Top of 221. Uve'iker davar zeh. And in the main point over here in this topic, namely, im dinei bnei Noach b'dinei mominus, if the laws of the Bnei Noach, when it comes to monetary laws, to civil laws, hey madinim nimusiyim, are they manners? Are they laws that are made up based on logic and based on the needs of society? Oy dinim yuchadim kfish nitztavu, or are they specific, particular laws that they were commanded to keep in a certain way? Though that's basically summing it up in one sentence, the question, the argument that we had earlier, two opinions. So getting back to this point, says Rabbi Kasher, Yesh ledayek min halacha hamuveres barambam. We can be specific over here, or we can actually deduce from a law which is explained in the Rambam, Perek Ches Mehilchis Nizkei Mammon, chapter 8 of the laws of property damages, and there's a typo here, it says Halacha Dalet, it should be Halacha Hey. Chapter 8, Law 5. And we quote, Now, again, as we've stated many times, because of the censorship, it says akum many times in the regular printed version, and that's usually not the way it's supposed to be. It usually should be a different word. Again, just to remind everyone, akum is an acronym for those that serve the stars and the constellations, and that's a generic term which means all non-Jews, even though why do we have to say that the non-Jews don't worship stars and constellations? So it's just because of the censorship. They changed it because they didn't want to be offensive and didn't want to say goy or nachri or anything like that. So just bear that in mind. Now we quote the Rambam. Shor shel Yisrael, an ox belonging to a Jew. An ox of a Jew. Shenogach shor shel akum, that gored an ox of a non-Jew. And again, not an idolater, but a goy. No, that would have to be more. That would be specified. That the Rambam would speak about in more detail. He would have to say that. So here we're talking about any non-Jew, not a ger toshav actually. So an ox belonging to a goy, damaged. He gored an ox belonging to a non-Jew. Bein tam, bein muad. Whether the ox of the Jew was in the category of tam or whether he was in the category of muad. Very briefly, there are two types of oxen, and this is pretty much unique only for the ox. They're, halachically speaking, in the Torah, there's the first 2 times that a Jew's ox gores, he is still considered to be a tum, and he's kind of innocent, and therefore the owner only pays half the damages.
Is a Tom the one who gores like it's his first time and he doesn't know?
First 2 times. First 2 times, and after he gored, the owner was warned, you better watch your ox because it seems like he's a wild ox. Now, it could be that it was just, one time he got angry. It could be the ox just doesn't really have such a bad temper, just. So, but if it happens a number of times, from the 3rd time and on, we now tell the owner, we're keeping a record of which ox it was. I mean, this guy owns 50 oxen. This particular ox, he went to court. There are 2 witnesses. We know which ox it was, and this ox of yours has been goring too many times. So now you have to pay 100% of the damages. But until then, it's only 50%. So in other words, the ox has a specific type. There are 2 types of oxen. There is the tam and the muad. All right? Now, obviously, he starts off as a tam, but then he becomes a muad. And a muad means that he's done it enough times that he is considered responsible, and the owner has to take full responsibility. The owner cannot claim it's an ox. If that's the case, then you know what you should have done? You should have taken the knife and slaughtered it, and then you can eat the meat and you can sell the meat. That's what your ox is good for. If your ox is good for plowing and he's good for herding and killing, you're taking responsibility over here. And if you say you can't, well then, sorry. It's not an excuse. But for the tam, we say he only pays 50%. So here the Rambam says, if an ox of a Jew gored an ox of a non-Jew, whether he's a tam and even if he's a muad, patur, the Jew is exempt from any payment. Question. And now, of course, if he would gore an ox of a Jew, he'd have to pay based on his status, either 50% or 100%.
Status as in
tam or muad. The ox's status.
The ox. Okay, I was going to say.
No. If the ox of a Jew gored the ox of another Jew, he has to pay. Question is, what's the damager's status? Is that ox a tam? Then he pays 50%. Is the ox a muad? Then he pays 100%. Here we're saying if he gored a non-Jew's ox, he pays nothing. And the question is why? So the Rambam continues and explains. Lefi, because she'ein ha'akum, and again it should be something like hagoy or hanachri, or goyim, nachrim in the plural. Lefi she'eino akum mechayvin es ha'adam al behemton shehizika. For the non-Jews don't obligate a person to pay for their animals damaging. In other words, the law by the non-Jewish world is that if someone's animal damaged someone else's animal, unless, then they're exempt. What do you want from them? I mean, that's the way it was back then. If someone's ox went ahead and gored them, you're probably thinking, well, what about today if my dog goes in and bites someone? So am I obligated or not?
I was thinking about the context that he talks about, which is what if somebody brings dinim from the Torah and says, because the Torah...
Oh, no, that's exactly the point over
exactly
here.
Right.
One moment.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's what he's
Yeah. And therefore, what we Jews do, what our based in what the Jewish court does, we are going to judge according to their laws. In other words, we tell...
Because it's for your benefit, right?
It's for the Jews' benefit.
Yeah, right.
We tell the non-Jew, the damagee, the one who lost his ox, we say, look, in your courts of law, you're coming to the Beis Din, to the Jewish court now. Fine. In your court of law, between two non-Jews, what would be the verdict? Do your research if you don't know. Look it up in the, law books, and you'll find out that the law is that if one animal damages another person's animal, the person is exempt and pays nothing. Okay, so therefore we are going to obligate the Jew to pay nothing. We are not going to go by Jewish law, because the damagee, the victim, was an ox owned by a non-Jew. And then the next law, the Rambam continues and says, Vishar shel akum, and the ox of a non-Jew, of a goy, shenogach shor shel Yisrael, that gored an ox of a Jew. The opposite case. A non-Jew's ox damaged, killed, an ox of a Jew. Bein tam bein muad, whether the ox had the status of tam, which is 50%, or whether he had the status of muad. Mishalim nezek shalem. He has to pay full damages. So it seems like we're not at all being consistent. In other words, if it's a Jew and a Jew, so then it's either 50% or 100%, but you always have to pay. If it's a non-Jew and a non-Jew, according to the non-Jewish laws, you never have to pay. So now we're saying that if the ox of a Jew gored the ox of a non-Jew, we're ignoring tam and muad. We're saying you have to pay nothing because that's their laws. But if the table is turned, if it's the reverse, and the ox of the non-Jew gores the ox of a Jew, then we say, we don't care whether the ox is a tam or a muad. It could be the first offense. You have to pay in full.
Under what Beit Din? A Jewish Beit Din?
Yeah, this is all in a Jewish Beit Din.
Right.
Now, the question is, wait a second. How can you pay full? It's one thing to say that by their laws, the Jew has to pay nothing. Okay, but now you want to take money from the non-Jew because his ox did the damages. So if it's a tam, it could only be 50%. I understand if it's a muad, you're taking full payment because you're saying we're going to use Jewish law, whatever works for us. How do you take full payment if the ox of the non-Jew is only a tam? Says the Rambam, Knas zeh. This fine, it's a penalty. It's not a payment in the sense of reimbursement. It's a knas, which means a fine. Knas zeh hu la'akum is we're fining the non-Jew lefisha einon zehirin b'mitzvos, because they're not careful in keeping commandments. Ve'einon mesalkin hanezek, and as a general rule, they do not take away damages. You see, the Jew, the law-abiding Jew, is so careful about making sure not to leave any dangerous or any stumbling block or anything like that in the way. There's laws. You can't just leave a pit. You got to cover it. If you leave it open, then you're liable, and you have to make a proper fence, and you're all these things. The non-Jewish world, we are stereotyping and saying the non-Jew is not careful in keeping these mitzvahs, and they're not careful in taking away, in preventing and safeguarding from damages. And if you're not going to obligate them, al nizke behemton, if you're not going to make them pay for the damages of their animals, like in this case where their ox gored an ox of a Jew, ein mishamrin oisa, and they're not going to guard them. Everybody knows that the way a person behaves is because he's afraid of the law. So if the law won't require them to pay, then they won't properly watch their animals, because what do they have to lose? Umafsidin momen habriyos, and they're going to cause people's property to be lost. Atkan, up to here is the quote from the Rambam. So the end, it seemed like the Rambam was already speaking not just within the Jew. It sounded like he was saying that really it should be that if a non-Jew's ox scores a non-Jew's ox, he should also pay. But the implication, and this is the Rambam didn't say this, but the implication is that, well, we're not mixing into their laws. So do what you want. But once we're involved, and we then can step in and tell you what to do in our laws, so we're saying like this: your ox damaged, you have to pay, because you need to know that you have to watch your ox. And if you know that you have to pay, you will be more careful. And if you did pay once, next time you'll be more careful. So that's the second part of the law, that if the non-Jewish ox scores the ox of the Jew, as opposed to the first law, where we're telling the Jew, we're telling the non-Jew who's the damagee, we're telling him, we're going by your laws. Your laws are that if an ox scores another ox, there's no payment. Okay, so if the Jew's ox scored, no payment.
How was any of this getting into the Jewish court?
It has to be theoretical.
Well, no, it could be that they chose to come to Din Torah.
Oh, just like in...
It could even be outside of Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't have to be Ger Teshav.
In 8 Hilchot Malachim, the Rambam talks about it right after.
That if they choose to come to us.
Yeah.
It could be that the non-Jew says, look, I had a dispute with the Jew, and I want to go by the Jewish law. I trust your beis din, so I want to go and do it by your beis din. That could be. Even today, where obviously the beis din is extremely limited in the power that they have, if I got it right, basically, it's binding arbitration. These three judges, the three rabbis, that hear a case between two Torah-observant Jews, it's binding arbitration. They both sign a legal document stating that they are taking upon themselves and accepting what this court, even though the court is not really recognized by the system, by the judicial system, so it's just these three people, whatever they're going to say, we are accepting to follow it, and we're not going to contest it. And when they sign that, that has legal bearing. And now when one of them, the one who lost the case or whatever, was not pleased, when he feels that he was wronged, it's going to be very difficult for him to be able to now turn to court and say, I want to sue this fellow. And because the other guy is going to bring the document and say, what do you mean sue? We had binding arbitration. That's the whole point of arbitration. In other words, we chose not to go to law. He chose not to sue each other. We chose, and it doesn't have to be, it could even be, anybody could go to a lawyer and say, we both agreed that we're going to go follow what this lawyer says. It doesn't have to be a judge. I guess it doesn't even have to be a lawyer. It could be anybody. if it's legal arbitration, we said, we want to go to our neighbor. We're 3 neighbors. 2 neighbors got into a dispute. We say, no, that guy's pretty fair. And we want to go have him hear our case, and we want him to give the final verdict. And if they sign such a contract, unless I'm mistaken, I think in the United States that would be binding. I mean, why would you want to rely on your next door neighbor, and especially if he's not a judge or a lawyer, but to say, no, we want to follow what he says. So let's say, so 2 Jews have to go to the Beis Din. It's forbidden for a Jew to take another Jew to the secular court. But if it's between a Jew and a non-Jew, well, we can't, the Jew can't force the non-Jew to come to Beis Din. But let's say that the non-Jew says, I want to go to the Beis Din. I want to get the divine law. I want to follow what your law says. So, okay. So in this case, we deal with him, quote-unquote, unfairly. Because if the Jew's ox did the damage, suddenly the Beis Din tells him, well, in your secular court system, here's what the law is, so that's what we're going to rule. So no, I'm not going to the secular law. I'm coming to the Beis Din. Say, sorry, the Jew in this case is exempt from paying anything, because if you were to take him to your secular law, your secular court, he'd be exempt. So we're not going to make him pay in a Jewish court. Okay? But if it's the other way around, and the ox of the non-Jew gores the ox of the Jew, now we don't say, well, in the secular law, no. We say that, it's really not right that in the secular court of law you would be exempt, because then there's too much freedom or not enough safeguard. So really, you should have to pay. Now, this whole business of tam and muad, of paying 50%, that's a Jewish law. That doesn't apply. What's this business of 50%?
So the person that's going to a Jewish court,
the non-Jew that's going to a Jewish court,
the non-Jew says that he wants to follow the Jewish law. Mm-hmm. He's not. Then they're not following the Jewish law.
That's correct. It's not that he wants to follow Jewish law. We don't give him that option. He wants to be judged by the Jewish court, and they say that's fine. You want to be judged by the Jewish court. Now, generally speaking, in most cases, you're going to get the ruling that a Jew would get. Mm-hmm. But in this case, because the non-Jewish law is that the damager doesn't have to pay anything, that the damager doesn't have to pay anything, so then if the non-Jew is the damager, then you still have to pay. But if the Jew is the damager, then we're going to...
Are we assuming that we're in a country where the laws are set up that way, where the laws are set up that they would not pay for the damage?
Yes.
Or the laws don't have all sorts of regulations about taking care of their oxen?
No. So the Rambam makes this general statement, and he says that they're not careful in mitzvahs, and they do not remove damage.
Which is the definition of a goy, according to Ritva. They're not careful in keeping the mitzvah.
Yeah, but if you go to a place like the United States where you got regulations, you got books and books about regulations about having your seatbelts and all that.
The definition of a ben Noach, according to the Ritva. They are careful in keeping this up.
But would that, how would that be handled?
I think the term "careful in keeping" mitzvot is an actual Iker term. It's you gotta.
Without getting too much off subject, do you know offhand what is the law if someone's dog, probably the most common pet that would do damage, if someone's dog ran off the property or ran away with the leash, whatever the case is, and bit someone else, and gave the person rabies or damaged the person, is the owner, do you know for a fact, would he have to pay? Is he
liable?
Don't know
for a fact.
Huh?
Don't know for a fact.
Do you know?
I've heard.
I'm under the impression that he is. It's just difficult to pursue it, but it's
I have heard in cases where people they have ruled this dog is known to do this.
Like a muad.
Yes, they have. There's a concept, but I don't know if technically if it's a 1-to-1. I don't know if it's the same type of thing as Jewish law. but there does appear to be.
You know, if it's not the first offense, and so my question is, how much of that is left up to the particular judge's discretion?
Oh, right.
That's my point. In
I
other
see.
words, what we're saying now, it sounds like it's up to the judge's discretion. And the judge says, look, you've got this German Shepherd that has ripped apart. You own him now for 3 years, and he's killed a number of people and ripped apart this. So then the judge would throw the book at him and say, hey, you did damage and whatever. Whereas if another guy comes in and they have this little tiny poodle, and it doesn't look like it could harm a fly, and somehow it went and it bit someone and it caused, really bad damage. So the judge will probably say, well, but are there laws clearly, because laws are really funny. They get into all sorts of details. And I don't even know if there's laws about oxen. It's probably illegal unless you're on a farm. You can't have a pet ox. Nowadays in a metropolitan area.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's
So
considered
a danger?
A danger.
So they do have laws.
Well, of course, there's tons. I mean, come on.
So you can have a pet dog.
You can't have a pet
cat.
like alligator. You can't have
Yeah, if you got a dog, you got to keep the dog on a leash. You got to keep.
There's like exotic. You
yeah,
can't have like
there's
a lion.
all sorts of laws.
You can't have like a lion.
Can't have a lion.
You can't. You can have like exotic. They're called exotic animals. Like you can't. If you got to have a dog that's on a leash. Things like that. Like you have to.
So it's illegal for a person to take the dog for a walk without the leash.
I think so. I think you have
In
to.
Chicago, yeah.
I think you have to have a leash on your dog.
And if the dog ran away, and they ran loose from the leash and they went and did damage, so I am obligated.
You're
Yeah.
The owner would be
I would think so. Yeah.
responsible.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the law, but I'm pretty sure growing up, in the States, I mean, that's...
Okay. But anyway, what the Rambam is saying is that they're not careful in mitzvahs and they do not take away damages. They don't safeguard.
Be careful in mitzvahs. Whose mitzvahs? I would assume B'nai Noach, Sheva mitzvahs. That's why I think it's an
if he's in a Jewish court,
yeah.
and they're talking about Jewish mitzvahs, then maybe they're not careful about the Jewish mitzvahs.
Which they're not supposed to be, right?
Yeah,
Well,
but
maybe,
yeah, why would you
well, the whole
explicitly say that?
question of this teaching is
That's what
whether
I'm
or
saying.
not.
I think it's an Iker term. I think not being careful in a mitzvah is an actual Iker term. It's an actual thing. It's like it's a signal. That,
Well, the whole question of what we're looking at is whether or not these Jewish mitzvahs of things like oxen goring oxen would be something that would apply to us or not.
Okay, so we're going to see some interesting things coming up.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That's why.
Yeah, he
bring that
continues.
up, I'm sure.
Uvasagas haravid. And on the critique of the Ravid, what does he argue? What does he have to say against this statement of the Rambam? And we quote, Amar Avraham. That's how the Ravid often introduces his statement. It means Avraham said, and that's the Ravid's name. Rabbeinu Avraham ben David. Amar Avraham. Avraham said, Hataino hazois, this claim, eina maspekes, is insufficient. Sheharei, for behold, heim toivsim guf hamazik, they, the non-Jews, they grab hold of the damager himself, v'nifra'in mimenu, and they take payment from him. In other words, the Ravid says, what are you talking about? If a non-Jew's property, if his animal damaged another non-Jew, the non-Jews grab hold of that guy and they make him pay. So what are you saying they're not careful about in mitzvahs and they're not careful about taking away damages? Right. The Ravid says, I disagree. That's not the fact. Okay? And that's the end of the Ravid.
Really?
Yeah. That's it. Short.
So that's an actual disagreement.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He doesn't just say, well, I think the reason's different.
Yeah, right.
Or he says, no.
That's interesting.
Uba Migdal Oiz. The Migdal Oiz is one of the commentaries here on the Rambam. And the Migdal Oiz, Mevi Moker La Rambam. He brings a source for this Rambam. because, as we're going to see, others are going to claim that the Rambam doesn't really have a source. But remember, we've said at other times that everything the Rambam says, as a general rule, he has a source. And if we don't know the source, that's our problem. But he has a source, except for when he doesn't. So then he'll say, it appears to me, or I think. He'll at least make a clear hint. Yeah, so what is this? So the Migdal Oz brings a source for this Rambam, Me Yerushalmi, Bava Kama Perek Daled Halacha Gimel. From the Talmud Yerushalmi of Bava Kama, which is the tractate where the laws of damages are found, chapter 4, and what it's called there is Halacha, it's like Mishnah, Gimel. Okay, so he brings a source. Fine. And the Lechem Mishnah, another commentary right here on the page of the Rambam, he also brings down the same Yerushalmi. All right, so we have a few commentaries that are using this Yerushalmi as the Rambam source. In other words, they're kind of coming to his defense. The Ravid says, what are you talking about? He said, he didn't make it up. The Rambam is not just prejudiced against Goyim. Yeah. He has a source.
I would say that the Rambam is talking about Goyim, and the Ravid is talking about a Ben Noach. He's defending Ben Noach.
Well, then you're saying that there is no argument. There's a misunderstanding.
Correct. Yeah, yes, exactly.
Well, let's see.
Okay.
V'loshna Yerushalmi. So now, let's quote this Yerushalmi that we're saying. We're throwing around the source. The Migdal Oz and Lechem Mishnah say it's a Yerushalmi. Let's see what the Yerushalmi says. Rebavahu. B'shem Rabbi Yechanan Omar Kedinehen. All right? These Amoyroyim, these sages of the Talmud time, post-Mishnah era, they say that we judge them according to their laws. That's the source. So the Ram didn't make it up. This statement in the Yerushalmi says that if a Jew has a dispute with a non-Jew, and if it works in favor of the Jew to follow the non-Jewish law, that's what we do. Kanireh Shepirushu, so says Rabbi Kasher, apparently, what seems over here, how are they interpreting? Shayirushalmi koi, that the Yerushalmi is referring al reisha de masnisim, on the beginning, on the first part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the same in Bavli and Yerushalmi. It's just the Gemara which is very different. So the Mishnah statement, which this Yerushalmi is going on, what does the Mishnah say at the beginning? Shor shel Yisrael, an ox of a Jew. Shenagach shor shel akum v'chulu, that gored an ox of a non-Jew, etc. All right, that's the statement in the Mishnah. Let's see that. Okay, so it's an explicit Mishnah. So this is what I'm looking at now, is Mishnah. So it's not Bavli or Yerushalmi. It's both.
It's both. Oh.
Yeah, this is the source. This is the basis. So the Mishnah in Bava Kama, in the chapter Shor Shenogach Dalet Vehei, an ox that gored 4 or 5. Yeah, So it's chapter 4, Mishnah 3, in Bava Kama. That the middle of the Mishnah says as follows: Shor Shel Yisrael, an ox belonging to a Jew, Shenagach l'Shor Shel Akum, or Goy, which gored an ox of a non-Jew, Patur, the Israelite is exempt. V'shel Goy Shenagach l'Shor Shel Yisrael, but if an ox of a non-Jew gored an ox of a Jew, Bein Tam uvein Mud Mishalem Nezek Shalim, whether he is in status of Tam or Mud, he pays full damages. So that part is clear.
We read that.
Right. So the only thing is, the explanation is what we're trying to figure out. So the Ravid is disagreeing with the Rambam's explanation. And the commentaries, the Lechem Mishnah, the Migdalois, are saying that actually this source for the Rambam's explanation is the statement made in the Yerushalmi, going on this Mishnah, which says that we judge them, the non-Jews, according to their laws. That's apparently how the Lechem Mishnah and the Migdalois are learning the Yerushalmi. Okay. Continues Rabbi Kasher and he says, Amnam, however, Ipnei Moshe, that's one of the two main commentaries on the Yerushalmi. In other words, we don't have Rashi in our commentaries there as we do in our Gemara. So one of the commentaries on the Yerushalmi is called Pnei Moshe. However, in the Pnei Moshe, which is right there in the Yerushalmi, Mifaresh, he explains, Shiloshan Yerushalmi, that the language of the Yerushalmi that we just quoted, that says, Rebavo said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, that it's like their laws. Koi is referring al haseifa, on the end of the Mishnah, not on the part that says that the ox of a Jew that gores the ox of a non-Jew is exempt, but rather on the last part, sheshor shel akum, that the ox of a non-Jew, afilu tam mishalim nezek shalom, even if he's a tam, he has to pay in full. Al ze omar, with regards to that one particular clause, that if the ox of a non-Jew gored the ox of a Jew, even if the ox is a tam, it's a first offense, he has to pay in full. Al ze'omar kidinehen, and with regards to this, the statement is made in the Yerushalmi that we follow the non-Jewish law. The gam tam mishal nezek shalem, meaning that by the non-Jews, even for a first offense, you pay in full, 100%. So in other words, again, the Rambam's explanation has just been deflated, refuted, saying, well, what's the, or at least this is not the source. The Yerushalmi, according to the Pnei Moshe in the Yerushalmi, that's not the meaning of the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is not saying, the Yerushalmi says one word, by the way, kidinehen, follow the non-Jewish law. Which part? There's two opposite laws here. We're being biased, so to say. We're being unfair to the Gentile. We're always working it in the benefit of the Jew. So which part is kidinehen? So according to the Pnei Moshe, kidinehen, that we follow the non-Jewish law, only means why are we being so strict and making the non-Jew pay in full, even in a case of a tam? So we're being more strict than if a Jew's ox would have gored a Jew's ox. And the reason is because in the non-Jewish court system, there is no difference between a first offense and a 10th offense. The point is, by the non-Jewish world, if your animal damaged, you are liable to pay 100%. It's just that the Torah is more lenient when dealing between one Jew and another Jew. In this very particular case, it's only by an ox. Other animals, we don't say that. By an ox, we say that the first couple of times, you only have to pay 50%. But we're not going to let a non-Jew get away with that. Why should he only pay 50%? That's a special law that if a Jew's ox damages a Jew's ox. But by the non-Jew, let's go according to the regular law. By the letter of the law, so to say. By their law. And that is that you always pay. In full. And continues Rabbi Kasher, and he says, and actually, you have to say it that way. The way the Pnei Moshe explains it, that is the way you're demanded to explain according to the content of that Yerushalmi. V'chein kosav ri Levi b'feirushoi. And so wrote another commentary, on his commentary to the Yerushalmi. Shekein muchach, that this is clearly proven, mehemshech lashon Yerushalmi, from the continual discussion in the Yerushalmi. Keep reading further there. And it's not going on the first law of the Mishnah that says that the acts of a Jew, that accord the acts of a non-Jew, that let's follow the non-Jewish law, that an animal which caused damage is exempt. No, that's not what's going on. Okay? So we do have difficulty understanding what does the Rambam mean, and why does he say what he does? Because basically we're rejecting the Migdal Oiz and the Lechem Mishnah's explanation. They're saying it's this Yerushalmi on this Mishnah Bava Kama that is the Rambam source, and he's saying that's not
because it doesn't fit the exclamation.
Right, because like the way that when the Yerushalmi says we follow the non-Jewish law, it's about the second part. Why we always make the non-Jew pay in full, not why we have the Jew be totally exempt. The Mishnah never said that, and we don't know where the Rambam got it from. And that's the Ravid's claim. The Ravid says, of course they make the guy pay. If a non-Jew damages a non-Jew, they take him to court and they'll make him pay. So therefore, what are you suggesting? No one's arguing that the law is that if the non-Jew's ox scores if the Jew's ox scores the non-Jew's ox, he's exempt. That's the Mishnah. And there's no dispute in the Mishnah. That's clear. What we're arguing about is when the Rambam is adding and saying that it's because we follow the non-Jewish law. Rambam says, excuse me, the non-Jewish law is not like that either. Oid kosav b'migdalois. Furthermore, this is the second paragraph, the Migdalois writes further, and we quote, Uma she'iksha ha'Ravid zal, says the Migdalois, and that which the Ravid asked, shetoivsin guf hamazik, the Ravid said that they grab hold of the damager himself, lo yhayo bizmanom. That wasn't so in their days.
Exactly.
One moment, we'll soon explain. It wasn't so in their days.
In whose days?
Apparently, let's see. V'anu ein lanu laleches achrei havolei akum v'amei haaretz. And says the Migdal Oiz, we need not follow the vanity of the heathens and the nations of the world, the ignorant people, asher ein lem loiksav v'loi lashoin. They don't have a written language and they don't have a verbal language. In other words, he's talking about people that I guess call them primitive, people that are totally illiterate. We don't have to follow the customs or the so-called laws of people that are totally illiterate. Ella, what should we go by? Achar divrei Talmud Bavli v'Yerushalmi chulu. We have to follow the words of the Talmud. We have the greatest sages. We have to follow the words of the Babylonian Talmud, of the Yerushalayim Talmud.
So, Rabbi, turn.
One moment.
Oh, yeah.
Uvederech b'dichusa, and then says the Migdalois that in a humorous way, I guess the expression today would be in tongue-in-cheek. He says, Uvederech b'dichusa, and in tongue-in-cheek, Ani koirei al zeh, I am going to use the verse about this. He says, I don't mean it totally seriously, but I'm using this verse. There's a prohibition, it says in the Torah, and I think it's this week's parsha, that you shall not go in their chukim, that the Jews are not allowed to follow in the ways of the goyim. Now that's not the meaning of the verse, but says the Migdalois, we're going to kind of use a little bit, perhaps you can call poetic license, to use this verse. But the point he's making here is that we're not going to follow the non-Jewish laws. And therefore, he says, so when the Rambam says that we're following the non-Jewish law, he says, no, we're not following any non-Jewish law. That's not the reason why the Jew is exempt from paying. What do you want to say?
Oh, who's this Migdalois?
The Migdalois, you want to know exactly where he lived.
Just...
He's a later commentary on the Rambam.
Oh, okay.
Could look him up.
Yeah, I will. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. I just didn't know what...
Yeah. I mean, not to get into it, there's a few Sfarim called Migdalois, so you have to be careful. When you look it up, it's the Migdalois on the Rambam.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, so...
Does it have the Kesef Mishnah in that?
Sure.
That does.
But in these chapters, there's no Kesef Mishnah. Here there's Magid Mishnah and Lechem Mishnah.
Interesting. Sorry? Oh, that's a very small set, too.
Huh?
That's a really nice, compact set.
Yeah.
To have all that in there.
What, this one?
Yeah.
Well, it's about 5 volumes, I think.
Yeah.
So he says like this. Says the Migdalois, nowadays, talking about in his times, it isn't the same law everywhere. And he says, come take a look, for example, in Spain, their custom there is that the damagee is responsible to distance himself. And basically, the stronger man wins. So if someone is swinging some dangerous thing, so it's your responsibility to get out of his way.
Okay.
He says that's
They're getting a little better.
He says that's how they were in Spain. And he says, and the Rambam grew up in Spain.
The southern portion, yeah.
So that's what he's saying. So he's attributing that the Rambam says that they don't keep mitzvahs, and
That's true.
And he says it's a matter of that's where he came from.
Yeah.
These people. So therefore,
They're kind of barbaric.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not only grew up in Spain, but he was there during the rough times.
Yeah.
Cordoba? Or something like that. That was down by the Muslim part.
Yeah, so since the Rambam grew up over there, that's his experience.
Yeah, that's a goy to my definition.
Yeah.
They're not careful.
The Magid Mishnah Kosav. Al Hasaga Sarayfit. Now the Magid Mishnah, again on the page, right over here. So we cover the Lechem Mishnah, Migdalois. The Magid Mishnah, one of the main commentaries on the Rambam, he writes on this Rambam's critique, on the Ravid's argument, the Ravid's critique. Umasha Kosav Rabbeinu Leficholu, quoting the Ravid, as he often does. And then he says, he quotes the Rambam. That which the Rambam writes, says the Magid Mishnah, Lefi she'ein, because they are not careful in mitzvahs, and they're not careful to remove damaging obstacles. Nesinas tamidai toizal, says the Magid Mishnah, what are you looking for sources? This is the Rambam's own logical explanation. It's not his own. It came from his mind. He has explained that that's the reason for this halacha. V'efshar, and continues the Magid Mishnah and says, and it's possible shebizman Gemara, that in the times of the Gemara, lo yahayu ha'akum nifroin klau, the goyim would not take payment at all.
Yeah.
They wouldn't take payment from a person. They wouldn't demand payment. If someone's property damaged someone else's property, they would not, in their court of law, make the owner of the damaging ox pay. Could be that that's how it was in the non-Jewish world in the time of the Talmud. And even nowadays, it's possible that not all non-Jews follow what the Raavad is saying. That's not a clear fact that in every civilized country they grab hold of the damager and they force him to pay. That may not be the case even nowadays. Even in a land where the law is such, they may not enforce it. So even if you have a civilized land, nowadays, speaks the Maggid Mishnah in his times, that they do have the law, and they do say that which is logical, that if your ox did damage, you are liable to pay, but that's it. It just remains a law. If you're not going to pay, no one's going to enforce it. So that's also. So in other words, what's coming out so far is that it all depends. It's not so absolute. It's not absolute. In other words, in the dinim aspect of it, do the non-Jews have a clear rule as to what you do in every single case? And the answer is no. That's what we see from here. Sometimes this, sometimes that. The Rambam has his approach. The Raavad says, what are you talking about? Of course they do. And then the Maggid Mishnah says, it depends. I agree with the Raavad, but what are you coming down so hard on the Rambam? What he's saying could be true. It depends where, it depends when. Okay.
So does the application of the Mishnah depend on...
No. The application is clear. That's what I'm saying. Nobody argues. The Raavad is not arguing with the actual ruling of the Rambam because it's coming from a Mishnah and the Mishnah is not disputed. There's one opinion in the Mishnah. But the argument is why. We're arguing over here in the logic behind it. Yeah. The Rambam gives his explanation. The Raavad says, what are you talking about? And then they suggest that it's the source is the Yerushalmi, and then the Rabbi Kasher brings down the Pnei Moshe and says, of course, it's not that Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi is not talking about the first part in the Mishnah where the Jews ox scores, but rather the second part. And then he brings down the Maggid Mishnah, which says, hey, depends. Depends when, where. So this explanation of the Rambam is true in a very specific, if you came from Spain in those days, that's what it was. Or in the times of the Gemara.
Except that if it applies to other situations, if it applied in a place that has strict laws, you got a health department, you got all sorts of different departments, you got all sorts of regulations, government regulations, telling you what to do. It wouldn't change but it would change the exclamation.
Right.
Then the Rambam's exclamation would not apply in that situation.
Correct.
So we have to look for a different exclamation.
Or not. If we need an explanation, fine. But the ruling remains the same. The whole discussion here is, what's the statement that the Rambam is making that the Goyim are not careful in safeguarding damages? Right. Okay, now, the next part, which the heading for this one is Dinei B'nei Noyach, the laws of B'nei Noyach, Mashe Pasko Lehem HaTorah, that which the Torah has ruled for them. Okay. V'amerkeves Kosav, another commentary on the Rambam. He writes as follows. Oimer ani, I say, my b'dinehen, what does it mean when the Yerushalmi makes this statement and says that one word? That we judge them according to their laws. What do you mean their laws? Shekatzva lehen Torah. He says not their laws, that they're backwards laws. They're inappropriate laws, which is the way we've been understanding it. Well, at least if you're going to say that it's according to the Migdalois and the Lechem Mishnah, that you're saying that they don't make you pay. No, the Dinei means according to the laws that the Torah demands from the non-Jews. The Afalgav de Ben Noyach. Mitzuve hadinin, that even though for Bnei Noach there is a commandment of dinim, one of the 7. Mikol makom, nonetheless, shor ben Noach. Okay, now he's not using the word akum. He's talking over here, and he's saying ben Noach. The axe of a ben Noach, she'izik l'shor ben Noach, that gored the axe of another ben Noach. 2 equal level goyim, 2 Bnei Noach, we're calling them. Okay, Mr. A's ox gored, damaged, killed Mr. B's ox. Patur din Torah. The Torah does have what to say. It doesn't say, well, you guys go figure it out because one of the laws is you have to make laws. No. The Torah says that if a non-Jew's ox damages another non-Jew's ox, he is exempt from paying. She'ein ben Noach chayav al hagram. And the reason for that is getting into a very technical point over here. And that is that a ben Noach is not liable for something which is called gram, which means cause, indirect cause. And this, of course, comes in to many, many laws in halacha, and I'm sure that in the secular court it also must play a role to some degree even today. There's a concept called, I didn't directly do it, but it was...
B'nai Noach, would gram be the same term when it comes to manslaughter of another B'nai Noach, of another Ben Noach?
Why is that gram?
And it wasn't intentional.
No. Gram by manslaughter would be that a person left a dangerous situation and someone got killed because he didn't properly secure it. That's gram.
Oh, so it's not the
in other words, the guy has a factory or something, and he didn't make sure to whatever the case is. There, I don't know, or let's say there was a carbon monoxide leak or something that the guy could have prevented, and he didn't. So the person died, so he's completely exempt, even though he is the cause of the guy's death. But that's just the cause.
But is that what I'm saying? Is that the same term like gram that the Rambam uses when it talks about killing another Ben Noach?
What does he use gram?
I'm not saying. I'm asking if it does.
No.
Okay.
No, killing another Ben Noach. And why are you thinking of the word gram over there?
That sounds like manslaughter. Gram sounds like manslaughter. So if you're behind the wheel and you you get in a car accident, according to the Rambam.
That would be like the Ir Miklat story. Remember, running to the city of refuge? So
that's a Gertoshav.
Right. But over there...
But a Ben Noach, Rambam says a Ben Noach has to be killed. That's the whole issue. I thought that was the whole commentary on Makos 9a.
Okay, so Ben Noach has to be killed. Does he use the word gram?
Yeah. Is that like the same... You know what I'm saying? Maybe... I'm thinking in English terms of a manslaughter, but maybe in Hebrew, gram is an actual, some kind of specific...
Gram has nothing to do with manslaughter. Manslaughter could be a case of gram.
Could be, but it might not be.
Gram literally means cause.
Yeah, okay.
Indirect cause.
Okay.
So was that in Hilchos Ritzeh U'Shmeres Nefesh or Hilchos Malachim? Probably Hilchos Ritzeh U'Shmeres Nefesh.
The one I'm referring to is in Hilchos Malachim.
Is it? 1 second. We have to see both places. Hilchos Malachim, chapter 8, 9, where?
8 or 9. Sorry.
Let's see.
I'm going to say 9, somewhere in 9 probably, but... You know what I'm referring to, Bob? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It might not be the same, like...
Doesn't say anything about... Doesn't use the word gram here.
Okay. It might be a different function, like a different Iker term for causing somebody's death.
So when it comes to damages, says this commentary, the Merkavos, He's
Yeah,
saying
that's no
the
problem.
Torah law for Bnei Noach. Forget about interacting with the Jew. The Jew is not getting damaged and he's not doing the damage.
Mm-hmm.
The ox of a Ben Noach gored the ox of a Ben Noach. He says Torah law for the Bnei Noach is clear, and that is that the damager is exempt from any type of payment. Why? Because it is in the category of gram. It was not direct. What's the
Even if it's an ox that had a habit of doing it and the owner did nothing to restrain the ox.
That's right. He didn't sick him on the guy. He didn't tell his ox. He didn't take that red sheet and, he didn't. No. He just didn't properly watch him, which for a Jew would be full payment, and for a non-Jew was no payment, he says. When we speak about manslaughter, first degree, second degree, what does that mean?
First degree and second degree?
Yeah, what's first
I don't
degree
know.
murder? Intentional?
First degree murder is probably premeditated.
And what's
and
second degree murder?
intentional.
I think
And-
it's where the person gets angry
Yeah,
and
you're
they
enraged
and
under
they
the influence and stuff.
That's second degree.
I think, and then third, and then there's the one where the guy. Well,
I would probably say there's premeditated, unmeditated, which is like you are within your wits, but whatever happens at that time, you kill a guy. And then the third would probably be like under an influence or something like that. That's what I would assume.
Yeah.
So those are the terminology of the 3 degrees of murder.
Maybe.
And how about if someone killed by mistake? That's not called murder.
That's called manslaughter, I believe.
well, if it's a total mistake,
Yeah. Aren't they all manslaughter, even the first degree murder?
Maybe it's
Isn't
a
manslaughter
certain category. Maybe I don't know.
Term for one person killing another person?
It could be, but I whenever I hear manslaughter,
Yeah.
it's like unintentional. For instance, a drunk driver, that drunk driving and you kill somebody.
That's manslaughter?
God forbid, yeah, that would be manslaughter. And I don't hear a term like a certain like first degree manslaughter, second degree. It's like just manslaughter. So that's why I think manslaughter is its own category, not a super category.
V'ayin migdal oiz. Then he tells us, take a look again at the commentary of the migdal oiz. Sheyafe tziyin, that very properly, appropriately, he referenced Lesugya Bava Kama Kuf Yud Gimel. The Migdal Oiz sends us to look in the discussion in the Talmud Bava Kama 113a. V'hoikar. The main point that I would like to make is Didanin lahem kidinehem, that we judge the non-Jews according to their laws. Shechiva Torah lahen. And when we say their laws, we don't mean their made-up laws. We don't mean their laws of the time. And then we're going to get into this whole discussion and say, well, in the times of the Rambam, where he came from, well, according to the Ravid, according to the... No. When we say we judge according to their laws, we mean their Torah laws, what the Torah demands of them. And we pay absolutely no attention to the common or manners or the common laws that they make up. That's how he's learning. In other words, he's taking the approach that dinim means Torah law. And the Torah law doesn't necessarily have to be the same as for a Jew. It's not just, open up the Chumash Parshas Mishpatim or open up the Choshen Mishpat Shulchan Aruch and follow that. No.
Same for a non-Jew, you mean?
For a non-Jew.
Okay.
Saying for a non-Jew, there are clear laws that the Torah has something to say about.
Oh, but he's equating B'nai Noach with Goy there.
We're not getting into any difference here. Yeah, it's anybody that, other than a Ger Toshav.
Until he gives tzedakah, then it becomes a problem.
Well, why is that?
Because a Ben Noach that gives tzedakah, you have a mitzvah to sustain him, but a Goy that gives tzedakah, you don't.
Where did it say that? In the Rambam?
10:10.
Well, That's one way of answering the apparent contradiction from one line to the next in the Rambam, because otherwise it seems very inconsistent. Accepted. V'ayin b'chayros, and then he tells us, take a look in the Gemara Talmud b'chayros 13a, the masik hashas, that over there the Talmud has a conclusion, the kach perish b'dinehen, that this in fact is what it means when the statement is made b'dinehen, that you follow their laws, meaning the laws that the Torah dictates for them to keep, which may not be the same laws that the Jew has to keep, but it's not up to their court system to make up laws. No. He's saying Torah has laws, civil laws, for how the non-Jews are supposed to interact with each other, when they're obligated to pay and when they're not.
Who is saying this now?
This is all...
Kasher?
Yeah. V'sira, and then you will see shedivrei haravid shemasig, that the words of the Ravid that he is critiquing, minimus shalahen tmuhim, he's bringing it from their conduct. In other words, the Ravid is arguing on the Rambam. He says, what are you talking about? They will grab hold of the damager and make him pay. That also doesn't seem understood. What's the Ravid saying? Who cares what they do? It seems like the Ravid is arguing and saying, what do you mean that they don't care to prevent damages? That's not true. The fact is different. That's irrelevant. That's not the point. The point is, B'dinehem means that the Torah has laws for the Bnei Noyach.
So the Ravid
is also difficult, yeah.
So the Ravid is talking about some court system that decides to...
He's saying that that everybody, by all the non-Jewish courts, the fact is not like the Rambam says. They do make the guy pay. They do force him to pay. So now we're saying, but at this point, that's also not the point. Where we're holding now, what's the Ravid saying? That's not the issue. The point is that the Torah has laws for them that they have to keep. It doesn't matter what their laws are. That's exactly not the point. The point is that b'dinehem, Torah tells them how and when they have to pay. And that's the whole idea here. So that was the Merkeves asking over here on the Ravid. V'hinei, says Rabbi Kasher, and behold, Mashet Tom ala Ravid, that which he is bewildered, he's asking on the Ravid, Shemefaresh, that he interprets, B'dineihen, that you go by according to the non-Jewish laws, Hainu nimuseihen, meaning their conduct, the laws that they have come up with. Well, maybe Mikmor Bavakama Kufir Gimel, and he brings down the Gemara from Bava Kama, which says like this: Yisrael v'Knaani, and again, it's a matter of the censorship, because then in parentheses it says we have a goy. You know, it's if a Jew and a non-Jew, or and then in the brackets anas, which means a forceful non-Jew, someone who's going a bully.
Duress.
Yeah. Shabo, that they came, and again with the brackets lefanecha, before you, before the Jewish court. Ladin, to be judged. So basically, a Jew and a non-Jew are coming before the Jewish court. If that's the case, if they're appearing before you, the non-Jew is coming with the Jew to the Jewish court. If you are able to acquit the Jew according to Jewish law, zakehu. So then make the Jewish person win the case, acquit him. Ve'emor loy, and say to him, to the non-Jew, to the other litigant, kach dinenu, that's our law. You came to our court of law. Our law is that he is innocent. Either you owe him the money or he doesn't owe you the money, whatever the case is, any case. Bedine knanim, or umay sa'ilam. But how about if the way that the Jew can win the case is according to the non-Jewish laws, that according to their laws, zakehu, so then again, make the Jew win the case, acquit him, ve'emor loy, and then say to the non-Jew, kach dinchem, this is your law. Okay, Ad kan nesafti al pi ksav yad Hamburg. So says Rabbi Kasher that this is what the addition that I just made is based on the manuscript of Hamburg. It was a certain manuscript, I guess, that found its way to Germany or whatever. So based on that manuscript is what he's saying.
Manuscript of which writing?
At Hamburg.
Just that's the name of it. Huh?
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's the name of the book?
Well, that's how we identify this particular manuscript.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think he's talking about a specific manuscript, but it's the Hamburg version.
Yeah. Of the Merkevas.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
The Kanire, and apparently, Perush HaMerkeves, this interpretation of the Merkevas, which is what we quoted until now, Shekach Dinchem, that we tell the non-Jew that this is your law. Remember, the case is we always want to make the Jew win. We're being very unfair, very biased. And a Goy and a Yisrael are coming to us. So if the way the Jew will win is by the non-Jewish law, we tell him this is your law. Hainu, meaning to say, B'dinei b'nei noyach al pi dinei ha-Torah. When we say this is your law, we don't mean, well, we're living in America, and according to the American rules, he wins, you lose. No. We mean according to the B'nai Noyach rules, that the Torah says that if you had a dispute with another Ben Noyach, you would lose, he would win. Therefore, we're going to make this, we're going to make you lose. Not B'dinechem, your laws that were made up. Your Torah laws. However, the Meiri on this Gemara, he interprets it the exact opposite.
Yeah, Bava Kama interpret. Is that what we're still talking about?
Or is it in Bechiris?
No.
He says it the exact opposite. V'zel l'shoinoi. And now we're going to quote the Meiri. And he says, V'chazor, and go back, l'zakoisoi, to make the Jew be victorious, acquit him, mitzad nimuseihem umin hagoiseihem, according to their customs, their made-up laws. So clearly he's not saying that dineihem means their Torah laws. No. If right now, in this country, in this time, the law of the land, the made-up civil law, is for the benefit of the Jew, that's what we tell the non-Jew. That your law Not your Torah law. Your law, meaning that's the civil law right now.
That depends on what country he's in.
In other words, as long as the Jew can either win by Torah law or by dinehem, meaning the current secular law. If either of those are an option, then the Jew wins. But if the non-Jew is in the right by both Torah law and by the current law, then we make him win, of course. Then the Jew loses the case.
It logically has to be the law of the country. The reason being, if you have the option of going before a Jewish court or their courts, it's got to be their courts, not a Jewish court.
Why can't, again? The non-Jew chose to go to the Jewish court.
Okay.
Willingly. So now the question is, what does it mean when we tell him, if the only way the Jew is going to win the case is because by the non-Jewish law, the Jew wins. The question is, what does it mean by the non-Jewish law?
Does the Beit Din go by the Torah? Does a Jewish Beit Din go by Torah law, or does it go by the non-Jewish law?
Right. That's the point. In other words, the Jew against the non-Jew. If by Torah law for Jews, the Jew wins, then we tell him, look, you're in a Jewish court over here, and the Jew won. But if by Torah law, the Jew would lose, but b'dinehem, that's the controversy here, the Jew would win, then we make the Jew win, and we tell him, well, b'dinechem, your law. Question is, what do you mean your law? So there's two ways of looking at it. According to the Merkeves, that means Torah law for the non-Jew. According to the Meiri, no, it means the made-up law currently of this country. And therefore, he can say, that this is your law. This is what you guys do. The Harav, Ramav Pirutinsky, Heir, and the Rabbi Kasher is quoting someone who was either a contemporary of his or a little bit earlier, but not much. Some Rabbi Pirutinsky, Heir, he pointed out, Shekein Mivur, that this explanation that we just gave of the Meiri, that you go by the current made-up law, by the secular law, so it also comes out, Gam b'shita mekubetzes, also in an earlier source, there's a book called the Shita Mekubetzes, which is from Rishonim, and Bav Metzia, Samech Beis, 62a, B'Shem HaRitva, in the name of the Ritva. And what does it say? Kol shebedinehem, anything which is in the category of their laws. Meaning, whenever we use that term, Bimei Chachmei HaTalmud, in the days of the sages of the Talmudic era, b'dinehem, according to their laws, hayugoyvin ribis kitzutza, they used to demand payment of interest, and very clear interest. What kind of, you're not supposed to take interest? What do you mean? But if their laws are that you're allowed to, so then we follow their laws. Ubav Metzia in Aleph, B'Shem HaRitva, and in Bav Metzia 71b, in the name of the Ritva, Shebedinei knew that in our laws, Yesh loymar Dina Yisrael, Beinam la'atzmam. When we say Dinei knew, we mean the Jewish law between Jew and Jew. V'chein Dinei Torah shel Bnei Noyach v'Dinei Mashmani Musim Shalahem. And likewise, when we say Din Torah, a court case of Bnei Noyach, and when it says Dineihem, their laws, it means Nimusehem, which is the type of laws that are made up by the people. Not laws that originated in the Torah, but the regular secular laws that were made up at that time.
So he agrees with the Meiri, basically. And they disagree with
The Merkavas.
the Marquevas.
And the next piece is going to bring a proof from the Sifrei, which is very early. He's going to bring a proof from there, like we just said, that for dinim, for bnei noyach, it means the made-up secular laws that are subject to change according to country and according to time.
Right.
He's going to bring a proof to that.
And the Ribba definitely understood the different Gedarim of non-Jews. It's really nice to see him. He's precise. He picks up on actual, like, Iker terms. Like, their denim. You know, that's an actual, like, Iker term. It's interesting. And Kasher doesn't say anything.
Well, he's the one who's compiling all this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know, but he doesn't give like any kind of conclusion. Usually, he makes.
Well, we're only halfway into it.
Right.
But he starts a new topic in the next.
No. He's making the argument.
Oh yeah. Oh right. I'm sorry. You just said that. Yeah. I assumed it was like an actual like. Okay. So we're just not done with it.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely curious to see what he says.
But yeah, this is where he's going, and this is going to be his conclusion. He's going to side with this, that the mitzvah of dinim for bnei noyach is that they're supposed to make up rules, and whatever rules they're making up, that's what Hashem says, I'm following, I'm telling you guys got to follow it, and even though it's bound to change from time to time, from place to place, that's fine.
As long as it doesn't break the
other six.
Yeah, right.
So the oxen, gore, and oxen would be an example of something that's outside of the other six.
But not.
So we're using that as a way to look at
That is
those
correct.
those kind of laws.
Right. And that would be, and they're, between one Ben Noach and the other Ben Noach, just whatever the law is.
But then we have to figure out how that Mishnah.
Well,
it seems that the Mishnah then has a lot of flexibility in it depending on the situation.
Well, if it's that Mishnah is pointing out that if there's any room ever for the Jew, for the Yisrael, to be in the right, he is.
So if you have the din of a Nocher or a Goy, don't go to a Jewish Beis Din. Unless you're considered a Ger Toshav in the land.
I think we'll continue next time.
Okay.
So we are on the left-hand column on page 221. And I think we're a little more than halfway through by now.
This is
We're
interesting.
just about half.
This is really one of the most interesting, I think.
Okay,
things
thank
we've
you.
had.